This lesson is all about proportions. And a proportion states that two ratios or rates are equal. If you look at the little equation here, it really looks like two fractions that are equal to each other. 3/15 equals 1/5. We could also, if we really want to express it as a ratio, we could also say 3 is to 15 as 1 is to 5. So try this one. Write the proportion 6 is to 9 as 16 is to 24. So to write that, we will just do 6 to 9 equals 16 to 24. There's a neat thing that you need to know here, and we did look at this when we were doing fractions, but it's really important to know here when we're solving proportions. And the rule is this. It's called the equality test for fractions. And it states that for any two fractions where the denominators are not equal to 0, the two fractions are equal if and only if A times D equals B times C. See how we're taking the numerator of 1 and multiplying, and we're taking the numerator of the other one with the original denominator, and we're multiplying. These are called cross products. Okay, remember that a product is the result of multiplication. So if the cross products are equal, then the fractions or ratios are equal to each other. So as an example, we could test it with this example. 4 to 14 equals 6 to 21, or 4 is to 14 as 6 is to 21, or we could call it 4/14 equals 6/21. Now, what we often will do is we'll put a little question mark above the equal sign, sort of to say, are these two equal to each other? Okay, and so to test if they're equal, we will calculate the cross products. So the first one will be 4 times 21. That gives us 84. And the second one will be 6 times 14. And that also happens to give us 84. And since the cross products are equal to each other, the ratios are equal to each other. Now, proportions might contain fractions or decimals as well. So here's a nice tricky one for you to try. I'm going to put the question mark there. Is 5 over 8 3/4 equal to 40 over 72? Okay, so to do this one, we're going to do the cross products. Let's do the easy one first. 5 times 72. For that one, we'll get 360. Then let's do 8 3/4 times 40. Okay, since that's fraction multiplication, we need to change the mixed number to an improper fraction. So 8 times 4 is 32, plus 3 gives us 35. Over 4 times 40 over 1. And notice that we can divide one numerator and one denominator by 4. So let's do that. Divide them by 4. So now we can multiply through, and we'll have 350 over 1, or 350. Since the cross products are not equal, okay, we've got 360 and 350, cross products are not equal, so we can write the proportion this way. Since the proportion is not equal, the way we would write that would be 5 to 8 3/4 is not equal to 40 over 72. Okay, so an equal sign with a slanted line through it means does not equal or is not equal to. Okay, let's look now at solving proportions as our next step. And really what that means is finding the missing number in a proportion. And in order to do that, we need to know an algebra skill. And so we're going to look at just a couple of quick examples of equations and thinking about how to solve them. So in this equation, I have 16n equals 64. When you see 16n, that actually means 16 times n. And n is a variable and it represents a value. And we want to find the value that makes the equation true. Later on, when we start solving equations, then we're going to learn about doing opposite operations in order to figure out what a variable is. So this means 16 times n equals 64. And in order to solve n, we'll divide both sides of the equation by 16. If we divide both sides of the equation, we're keeping both sides equal to each other. And we end up with 16 divided by 16, which is 1. So on the left side, we have n. And on the right side, 16 goes into 64 4 times. So we've solved that little equation for n. So n is equal to 4. We can always test this by checking what does 16 times 4 equal. And it equals 64, so we can see that n equals 4 is the correct solution. Let's try this next one where we have 15n equals 37.5. We're going to do the exact same thing. Whatever the coefficient of n or whatever our variable is, and the coefficient is the number that's multiplying it, we'll divide both sides of the equal sign or both sides of the equation by that 15. And in this case, and you may want to use a calculator for that, we will end up with 2.5. Okay, n equals to 2.5. So now let's look at how we need to use that skill when we're solving a proportion. So here's an example. We've got a proportion and we want to find the value of t that makes this proportion true. So that 8 to 20 is equal to t to 120. And we want to find that value for t. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the cross products. Okay, so 8, if this is true, then 8 times 120 is going to equal 20. And actually, I'm just going to write that the other way around just so that it looks more like the examples that we just did. Let me erase that. I'm going to just do the other cross product first. So I have 20 times t equals 8 times 120. It really doesn't matter whether your t is on the left or on the right, but the two examples we just did had the t on the left, so this will make it a little bit easier. So 8 times 120 is 960, and so we have 20t equals 960. I want to get that t by itself. I want to know what 1t is, so I'm going to divide both sides by 20, and I end up with a value that t is equal to 48. Okay, now to check the answer, I can do the cross products, okay? I already know that 8 times 120 equals 960. And now I'm saying that t is 48, so when I do the cross product there, I'm going to have 48 times 20, and I get 960 again. So since those two cross products are equal, then t equals 48 is correct. Okay, so this last little piece here was just checking, okay, by substituting the result that we got into our original problem and doing the cross products. Since the cross products were equal, our solution was correct. So these are the steps to follow when you're solving a proportion. Find the cross products, okay, so that way you're going to have a little equation with something times something equals something times something else. Divide both sides by the number multiplied by the variable, and I mentioned earlier that that's the other term for that is coefficient. Let me just spell that out for you. Coefficient. Simplify if necessary, and then to check your answer, just verify that the cross products are equal. Okay, here's another one, and because of the size of the numbers, you may want to use a calculator for doing that. So you can try this on your own by pressing pause, or you can just follow along. So I have 152 over 4 equals 456 over n. So I'm going to do the cross product. So 152n equals 456 times 4. So 456 times 4 gives me 1824, 1824, and I have 152n. So I'm going to divide both sides by 152. And when I do, I'm left with the result that n equals 12, because 152 divided by 152 is 1, so I have 1n, and if I do this division of 1824 divided by 152, I get 12. Okay, so now again, we can do the check by testing the cross products. So 152 times 12, and if you pull out your calculator, you'll get 1824. And if we do 4 times 456, we will also get 1824. So our answer is correct. Let's take a look at the next example. This one is a word problem, and it means that you need to set up the proportion in order to solve it. So if 5 grams of additive are added to 8 liters of fuel, how much additive should be added to 20 liters of fuel? This kind of question can be answered very easily using the same format for solving a proportion. So we know, the part that we know, the ratio we know, is that 5 grams of additive goes with 20 liters of fuel. Oh, sorry, goes with 8 liters of fuel. We want the same proportion, so we don't know, I'm going to use X here, we don't know how many grams we need to go with 20 liters of fuel, okay? When you're doing this, make sure that you have the same units on the top on both sides of the equation. So in both of these cases, grams is in the numerator, liters are in the denominator, okay? So you need to keep that the same in order for this to work, okay? Now, you don't need to write the units in the equation. In fact, often adding the units to the equation is more confusing. So you could write it like this: 5 to 8 equals x to 20. You just want to make sure that you do have the same units in the numerator as in the denominator. So now let's do our cross products. We've got 8x equals 5 times 20, or 8x equals 100. We'll divide both sides by 8, and we'll have the result that x equals 12.5. So we can say then that 12.5 grams, should be added. And that is the end of this lesson.